So we have a sound problem with the videos, and where we're going to have a Simon Peter video. Actually, there's a video for each sermon. It goes along with the sermon series of the little different characters post-resurrection. So I'm just going to run right into the passage for this morning, which is, yes, okay, that's the right passage. So it's John 21, got it, 3 through 19. but it's the right text there, I can see it there. So you will see the same text that I will be reading, John 21, 3, 19. Thank you, Sage, good job. Simon Peter told them, I'm going fishing. And they said, we'll go with you. They set out in a boat, but throughout the night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples didn't realize it was Jesus. He called to them, children, have you caught anything to eat? They answered him, no. And he said, cast your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. So they did, and there were so many fish that they couldn't haul in the net. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. When Simon Peter heard it was the Lord, he wrapped his coat around himself, for he was naked, and jumped into the water. The other disciples followed in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they weren't far from shore, only about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish that you've just caught. Simon Peter got up and pulled the net to shore. It was full of large fish, 153 of them. Yet the net hadn't torn, even with so many fish. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. None of the disciples could bring themselves to ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Jesus came, took the bread and gave it to them, and he did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Simon replied, yes, Lord. You know I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my lambs. Jesus asked the second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Simon replied, yes, Lord, you know I love you. Jesus said to him, take care of my sheep. He asked him a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was sad that Jesus asked him a third time, do you love me? He replied, Lord, you know everything. You know I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. I assure you that when you were younger, you tied your own belt and walked around wherever you wanted. When you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will tie a belt and lead you where you do not want to go. He said this to show the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. After this, Jesus said to Peter, follow me. The gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ. Thanks be to God. Maybe he was there early in the morning. Maybe he was thinking, what else can I do? I'm going fishing. That's what Peter says, I'm going fishing. Now, there's a lot of things that I do personally when I'm sad, confused, or scared. After the crucifixion, they've seen him already, that Jesus, and he's not in the tomb, he's resurrected, but everything is weird and strange. There's a lot of things that I do personally when I'm sad or confused or scared, but none of them is fishing. And so I don't know, I can't relate directly to Simon Peter, son of John, here. But maybe when he's scared or confused or doesn't know which way to turn, he just goes fishing. Evidently, this declaration meant something, but we don't know what for sure. Was he going back to the life he knew before he met Jesus? Was he trying to make a living? Was he trying to keep himself busy so he didn't have to think or feel anymore? Maybe he was full of feelings. Or was he just hungry? Or maybe it was a little bit of all of those. Maybe he was there on this early morning and he just missed Jesus. He just missed him. The Lord was around him so often. They were always together. So he did what we do when we miss someone. He went to a place or did an activity that reminded him of Jesus. He went fishing. Go somewhere or do something to conjure that person up in our memory. Do something they loved. Go to a place that they loved. Go to a place where there's a marker to remember them. Maybe that's what this I'm going fishing was all about. So Peter went fishing. And the others went with him. Sure enough. If he's going to conjure Jesus, he did it. Here he is, on the other side, on the shore, with a breakfast ready for everyone. Children, have you caught anything? Calls them children. Odd. Because we don't really know what Jesus looked like. It seems like they don't recognize him. Calls them children. Really curious. It makes me wonder what he looked. His resurrected body, did he look like the grandpa where he's calling everybody children? I don't know. But it's evident that he was not readily recognizable to everyone. Even in John's gospel, consistent with the way Mary didn't know it was Jesus, thought it was the gardener, until he said her name. And then here on the lakeshore, they have this encounter with this man, and it isn't until the miracle that the disciple that Jesus loved, who is not named, but has just said the disciple that Jesus loved. In heaven, he will have a name tag on that says the disciple that Jesus loved. But whoever he was, he says, it is the Lord. And Peter goes, are you sure? No, Peter does not say that. He jumps in the water. But it's even in Luke's gospel, those guys at Emmaus, and that's 2 weeks from now, but we're going to talk about that. But they didn't recognize him until he broke the bread. I mean, Jesus, I don't know, his resurrected body was different. And he calls them children. Have you caught anything? Well, anyway, Jesus instructs them. First of all, he's this man they don't know. Asks them a question, they answer. He gives them these other instructions. Put the net on the other side. Now, this is a callback, of course, to Luke 5 with the miraculous catch that actually broke the nets. But anyway, they caught 153 fish. Large fish. 153. Wow, that's a lot. And oddly specific. John likes numbers. He's always been like that about numbers. This was this many pots that made in water into wine, and this many that, and this many gallons, and all that stuff. But this is funny and not in a ha-ha way. Like 153? It's not like even a round number. It must symbolize something. But what it symbolizes to me, and for our purposes this morning, is that it was an abundance of fish. This miraculous catch. The second one we read in all of the Gospels, the other one being the aforementioned Luke 5's miraculous catch with the burst nets. This time they almost burst, but not quite. And this part of the story is the example of God's generosity toward humankind. There's always more than enough. There's always more than enough. If we, God's children, and Jesus calls them children right here in this passage, would only live in the knowledge and faith that there is always more than enough. We would be better stewards of the earth, and we would treat one another better. We wouldn't have to step on anyone to get ahead, because we don't, because there is always enough. We might even calm down and get off the hamster wheel and understand that God has this. this abundance is not to be ignored. There is always enough. And everything in our world would work out better if our scared by scarcity reactions would stop hampering the progress of the reign of God on earth. Because we are the ones that stand in the way. Because we're afraid there's not enough. And this story goes from weird to weirder. Oddly specific number of fish. Then we find out Peter likes to fish naked. Now we laugh about that, but it's really probably practical because garments weren't like readily available. They didn't have the Mall of Galilee back then. So he probably only had 1 or 2 garments, didn't want to get them like with hooks and bloody fish and whatever, water or spit or whatever was going on. He just took his clothes off to preserve them. Then he puts them back on so he can go swimming. I mean, so he probably didn't want to show up on the shore with absolutely nothing to wear, because we've all had that dream, right? Oh, where's my clothes? What do I do? And so he puts on his clothes, and then he jumps in the water. And wouldn't his clothes make it harder for, honestly, I could imagine Simon Peter like balling up his clothes and like walking through the water with his hand up, maybe doing a cross chest, like kind of a rescue kind of paddling with his hand, with his clothes up here. But no, he puts them on and then jumps in the water. Why can't he just ride in the boat, the rest of them? Peter's crazy. He's always been impetuous and crazy. He jumps right into the water. Peter was the same one on the sea. He said, Lord, if it's you walking on that water, tell me to come to you. And Peter gets out of the boat. He sinks, of course, but he tried because he can't be told. He doesn't count the cost. He just kind of goes. This part where Peter jumps in the water makes me believe that his motivation for fishing that morning in the first place was because he missed Jesus. And then when he realized it was the Lord, nothing could stand between him getting to him. Which is weird, because if I was Simon Peter, and I've been Simon Peter, the last really intimate encounter they had was Jesus telling him he would deny him, and Peter saying, no, of course not. And then he did. I don't know. Peter believed in forgiveness more than I do, I guess. So they have this breakfast on the beach. And you can picture them sitting there around the fire. Peter, still soaking wet. And in a quiet moment after the meal, Jesus asks Peter the love questions. Do you love me? Because to be honest, you kind of seem like a guy, Peter, who is only out to save his own skin. And that's what we have. That's why I read that passage beginning of the service, because that's what he did. That's who he was. And he was that in all 4 Gospels. The denial, the thrice denial. This story in John's Gospel is sort of what I call a lick and stick, because it's just added on. We don't know, it's the very last story in the Gospel of John. John could have been over before this. It would have been a nice ending, but they have this encounter with the breakfast by the water. It might have been like tacked on later like an appendix. But all 4 Gospels say that he denied Jesus 3 times, and then Jesus asks him the love questions. Yes, Lord, you know everything. You know I love you. Jesus responds, then feed my lambs. Because for Jesus, the lambs are the most important thing in all of creation. The ones that Jesus went to the cross for, the ones who the resurrection is for, all of them. Simon Peter, son of John, will you take care of them for me? Peter doesn't get an opportunity to say yes or no. But he gets the opportunity he probably didn't think he'd ever get to finish the mission, to continue the ministry. And after all that has happened, Peter is the one who is entrusted with this responsibility. Why would you give it to him? You saw him fishing naked, put his clothes on, jumped in the water. What's wrong? This guy! Ah! And Jesus says, it's okay, it's going to be fine. He's going to be good. Peter, stop with all this foolishness, fishing naked, jumping in the water, denying you know me, etc. The list goes on. Stop all this foolishness, trying to build a tabernacle at the Transfiguration. Get behind me, Satan. All that, that's Peter. And Jesus is like, just quit it and grow up and take care of my sheep. Now, people familiar with the Greek that the New Testament was written in will notice that Jesus uses a different word for love than Peter does in his response. I have to mention this because if you talk to somebody afterwards, well, did they talk about the Greek and the different love language? In Greek, there's different words for love. There's eros, which is romantic love, philos, which is family love, and there's agape, which is, we interpret it now as the love of God or unconditional love. Back then, when this was written, there was a different understanding of loves. Jesus asked Peter twice, do you agape me? Peter responds with a different word for love. And then at the very end, on the third, they both use the word philos, which is family or brotherly love. Scholars that really study this don't make a big deal about it. It's different, but I have to mention it, that I do know about it. I don't think it has much of a consequence. And I hesitate to point it out because there's not much of a but I need to let you know that I know it. So, at this point of the exchange, it isn't how you say it, though. It's not the kind of love you're talking about. At this point of the exchange, it's how many. Again, back to the numbers. If you denied Jesus 3 times and he told you were going to do it, then you need to be forgiven 3 times. The point of this exchange is the authenticity of Peter's love for Jesus. Because he is the risen Lord, Peter knows that Jesus can see into his heart. That is why he says, Lord, you know that I love you. And it is undeniable, pun intended, that Peter loves Jesus. Because Peter realizes that there's nothing he can hide from the resurrected Lord. He understands. He gets it. And he says, you see into my heart, you know I love you. I'm the one that jumped into the water. I'm a crazy man. And you may ask why Jesus had to ask him 3 times. It's not for Jesus. Jesus knows. It's for Peter. It's for that opportunity to really sink in that forgiveness. It has to be threefold because the transgression was threefold. This love is deep and abiding, authentic and strong. And we see the fruits of this love in the book of Acts, the Acts of the Apostles afterwards, because Simon Peter is a new guy in that story. He is out there doing the work. He lives into the Great Commission to feed and tend the sheep. He lives into it. Notice what it takes to follow Jesus. It's described here 3 times. It starts with love. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. Feeding and tending. That's it. Feeding and tending. Give the sheep what they need to survive. Jesus didn't say, grow my church or fill my pews or expand the budget. Build big, beautiful, bankrupting cathedrals. Jesus didn't tell him to do that. He said, feed my sheep. Nurture my people. Give them what they need to survive. Now, you might say, well, that's food, shelter, water, clothing. But we know from science that a child born cannot thrive unless it is what? Loved. The first thing you need to do to tend the sheep, Peter, is love the people. Tend my sheep. Feed my sheep. Give them good things. Nurture my people. Give them what they need to survive. Above food and shelter and clothing and water. You can't forget that stuff. But above all of it is love. And Peter lives into that commission. And so should we. The lectionary passage for this morning that we didn't read was also from John's Gospel, and it's the scene of the woman at the well who gets that water. You remember that water that she can drink and never be thirsty again? So it's better. It's more important than water, is that kind of love, that kind of spiritual imbibing. And so as a callback to our anthem this morning that my parents sang, we are going to join our voices together in singing the refrain. I think we'll sing it through twice, Doc. Is that okay? All right. We'll fill my cup, Lord. Would you stand if you are able as we sing together?